Before I get started, I just want to quickly introduce myself so you know who you're dealing with in the next couple of minutes. But you already know my name, Maggie here. And in case you're wondering where my accent is from, I'm from Austria, from the mountainous part called Tyrol. And to answer your next question already, yes, I know how to ski, and yes, I love it, which is a bit ironic though, because during the pandemic, I moved to sunny Portugal from where I'm joining today. So yes, you guessed it, I'm working remotely, just like with many other companies, because as a result of the pandemic. Mapcreator is now operating in a hybrid setup, still offering an office for our colleagues back in our headquarters in Eindhoven and some other parts of the Netherlands. But we have several colleagues who work 100% remotely, and well, we just get together for a few team outings a few times a year. In my last presentation, the last time I was here in this context, I was responsible for Mapcreator's user success. And with this continuing focus in mind, by now I'm responsible for our mapping product, finding out in which direction we should be heading, what you users need, discussing upcoming features with them, with our colleagues, with our dev team, and also deciding over functionalities that maybe need some redoing. So speaking of who or what is Mapcreator, who are we? We're a small company consisting of map enthusiasts based in the Netherlands, but with colleagues from all over the globe. And we're providing tools that allow our users worldwide to create and download custom-made maps. We believe that anyone can create maps, from graphic designers or to reporters or to people who are completely new to cartography. With our easy-to-use and quick-to-learn mapping tool, we believe that, we want you to create high-quality output so you can map your story. And we heard it just before from Paul. It's all about your story and getting enough attention for your story and getting your content out there, no matter which one it is. If it's fast-breaking news that need to get published now, or perhaps you need to map a round trip that gets featured in your travel guide, or you want to accompany your YouTube blog with some visuals. So let me tell you a little bit about how the Mapcreator idea was even born. But to answer this, we need to go back a little bit in time, precisely to the late 1940s, where originally maps were hand-drawn and handmade, which, as some of you probably know, is quite a considerable amount of work and time. So in the 1990s, our mother company Falkplan, with their Falk maps, maybe you've had some of them lying around or find them in a car, they started to automate and digitize this whole process and produced the first car atlas, which was created cover to cover 100% automatically, featuring over 500 and something maps on over 1,000 pages. And this is what this used to look like. So back then, our company leaders were thinking, why don't we have the system be used directly by the end user? And why don't we offer a tool that makes mapping easy and accessible? So in the early 2000s, the first maps were being created by the users with the map calculation only taking up to 45 minutes, which back then was really a big time saver, especially compared it to the initial days of drawing maps. When we started off, initially, we were focusing our work with newsrooms, and a lot of newsrooms also, colleagues here in this call. And also that's why one of our first product names was the familiar and popular Maps to News. So maybe you've seen one of those names fly by or our copyright. But besides newsrooms, we're now also working with industries like geopolitical security monitors, with governments, and lately focusing strongly on broadcast as well. But also just out of one tool, one browser-based tool that allows you to download a map within a few seconds from any browser, any time of day. So yeah, we've been on the map since over a decade now, and yes, this very bad pun is intended. And we used to support the more formally common output types like this static map here for print or for still images, or also interactive maps that can be embedded online or used on touch devices like you see here on this slide. But today I'm very, very excited and also a little proud to show our latest flagship, our brand new editing feature that allows you to create map animations. But before I show you what the tool actually looks like, maybe a brief insight into what kind of data sources we're working with, as given the audience here in this call, some folks of you here will for sure appreciate a short dive into some facts. In our tool, we're working with several data providers, although the majority is for sure in-house built and based off of OSM or OpenStreetMap. And for example, sometimes we complete some of the sets of natural Earth. Recently, we've published a daily updating continuous update street. Sounds complicated, but meaning that any update that is in OSM today will be in Mapcreator tomorrow after a careful review from our side in our validation tool. By the way, just some funny artifacts so you know what kind of situations we're encountering when working with OSM, but I think you know some of those too. Here, an example where a map enthusiast from the OSM mapping community was maybe a tad too detailed and even lined out the lines of the tennis court, which can be great, but maybe just not necessary for all of the use cases. And you can also have the complete opposite, like here in this slide, where you see what happens when the data gets too generalized, so that whole parts of the river Nile were actually just lost. That can also be, however, because a river sometimes flows into a lake, and then from the lake again, it becomes a river, which in OSM terms can also be two categories, polygons and polylines, which could have different visibility levels. Anyways, lots of fun for our in-house data team, as they love coming up with algorithms to improve these kind of visualizations. Here, by the way, an example of one of the algorithms that has been developed and published recently. We call it the spaghetti decluster, as this algorithm looks at very data dense or very scarce areas and only grabs the most important roads and connects them to a concise road network that makes sense. Since 2 years already, we support live data updates, for example, from USGS for earthquakes or from the National Hurricane Center, like you can see here. In practical terms, what that means is that any embedded map that has this layer, for example, in this case, you see Hurricane Ian from a couple of weeks build up a few layers. It automatically shows the most up-to-date available layer information, such as the track, the arrival times, the wind probability extents, or during elections, we can also receive live data feeds as votes are being counted. And lastly, we also work and offer satellite imagery, which at the moment we're sourcing from here.com, as who is, from my latest knowledge, sourcing them through Digital Globe. All right, so the idea of the Mapcreator tool is that any user has the freedom to decide completely for themselves what they'd like to show, what they like to hide. Since you can, for example, toggle the visibility of entire map layers or also of the features that you drew yourself. So in the end, the decision on how the map will look like, what information is visible and what not, is completely your user's decision. And with that, I'd like to show you now how a few maps can be created. I have a few use cases in mind, so let's just go through some of them. And I'm switching over to sharing my browser, where you can already see the Mapcreator tool loading. Just a very quick walkthrough over what you can find here in the interface. In the top part of the menu, a few common menu settings, such as what is the center of the map, what are coordinates, on which zoom level are we currently on, and do you have any rotation or tilt of the map active, which you can reset as well. You can also control the level of how much details you're seeing on this map at the moment. And then we can walk through these settings here on the left-hand side real quick. Our add elements menu, to be found under the plus, which allows you to add icons, text elements onto the map. You can draw lines, shapes, you can highlight entire administrative areas, and then you can add additional data layers that are maybe a bit more outside of typical cartography layers. But speaking to that of layers real quick, here our overview with which could remind you, or those that are familiar with Illustrator, looks a bit like the layer toggle functionality there as well. So you really do have the option to decide over how dense your map is supposed to be. So if you just want to hide all of these city names and you just want to remain with the country names, or if you want to bring back just the capital layer, for example. So basically, step by step, layer by layer, you can decide what kind of information should be visible or whatnot. And then the last step here for exporting our map, this is where we get to set how big our map is supposed to be. There's some presets available, or you just define it yourself by zooming in, by zooming out. So in the end, just like you know it from other mapping products, using your mouse or using the trackpad on your laptop, this is how you define what should be the center and what should be the focus of your map. So I would suggest we build a map together, and I took the liberty of stealing one of the slides that Paul showed before. I think it had to do with some disaster displacement that happened here in Eastern Africa. And just to show you actually what I'm talking about, I built this map already before. There's obviously a little bit of a map calculation process involved, which takes a few minutes. So in order to save some valuable time in this event right now, I downloaded this map already before, and I'm just playing the video that I created before and that we're going to build now together. Very simple map, just highlighting a few countries and bringing a few text elements onto the map with these numbers inside. So the tool that we will have to be using is our areas tool. You find that here in the middle under the add elements menu, and I can start off by, for example, bringing Ethiopia as a shape onto the map, and it now allows us to click on it, activate it, and give it a different color if you like to, just to make it stand out some more. But you can also change the color density, so I'm just making it like semi-opaque, and I just want to add one more shape to it. So I'm not going to recreate the exact same example, just to, as I said, save some time. So this one, I also want to give a different color and change the transparency level. Then you see a bit of a situation here, maybe. So the road network is now partly covered as the shape has been added on top of it, which is something we can very easily fix by working here with our elements list menu again. As I mentioned before, this is your overview of how the map is being stacked, what kind of layers are available and which ones not. And you can now grab those two shapes that we've added. And for example, using these toggles here, you can move them, for example, here under the water layer, so that lakes, rivers, and the entire road network remain available, remain visible, no matter where we zoom in or where we zoom out. Then in that example, we've also seen some text boxes. In this case, I can bring them onto the map with a very simple drag and drop. If you want to put them on a very precise location, you can also use the location finder menu. And then we have some features available that allows you to just change the content of it and change the color, change the size. So as mentioned before, you have the entire toolset available to really find your brand identity, to bring it across visually, to tell your story. And you have all of the menus available to exactly recreate that. Now, if you just need this map as a simple still image to go into a newsletter, or if you want to show it on your website, then we could go ahead now to our export menu and download it, for example, here as a vector file, which, by the way, could be edited in, for example, tools like Adobe Illustrator. Or you just download a JPEG or PNG, raster format, so whatever you're more comfortable with. And then anything that's here within this black frame is what's going to be downloaded here as a separate file onto our computer. In the case that this map should be available as a more interactive map, we want to embed it as in an iframe on your website, then you could add additional details to this map. We could use here our interactivity toggle, and you can explain some more and provide some more information here about Somalia. You can place website links, you can place images, you can place videos. And then in the end, that would be available as a hover event or with a tap event on mobile to get this additional information out. But today we're obviously here not for static, not just for interactive maps, we're here for map videos. So I'm going to use a toggle here on the bottom left-hand side to activate our video mode. And what we are going to do now is we are going to define different keyframes. And in these keyframes, I'm just defining different zoom levels and different aspects to create this moving event here from more of a continental level, closer zooming into the country level. First of all, I want to start off here with the level of showing Africa and a little bit here of the north still. what's very typical with map animations that is all of the other text elements are hidden. Obviously, our most important detail, which is that this is about these countries or that it had to do with displacing over 1 million of people, that most important information is already there. So in the end, we can hide everything else. So with one click, I can just hide entire text elements. And I want to decide that this is now the first keyframe we are creating. The next one goes a little bit closer to those two countries. And then my last view, I want to tilt and rotate my map a little bit and get a little bit more down here into the south. And I'll add that as a third keyframe. Very simple, just a chain of these 3 keyframes, and we could play these already here in the browser. I can just click on play, and we will see this zooming event that goes closer to the countries and tilts the map in the end. But obviously what's missing now is that we are going to define that the 2 countries and the text elements, that they will be added a little bit later during the motion. So what we can do is I can grab here now the layer of Ethiopia, and I can decide for it to appear in the 3rd second, and it should have a fading in effect. And Somalia, for example, I want it to be appearing only in the 4th second. And text box, it can also come in the 4th second, and it could maybe disappear again almost towards the end of the animation. And I wanted to have a growing and shrinking effect. And these changes, by the way, they can be visible here in our timeline as well. So very typical view that you know from other editing tools. We have here just a quick insight into which keyframes you're currently editing, and here an overview of where in the timeline the elements appear. And with one click, we are going back to our first keyframe. I can play the animation, and we will see how slowly and steadily each shape after the other is appearing on the map, just like we have defined it. Then what's left is for us just to export our map. At the moment, we have WebM file options as well as image sequences, which can be pulled into Adobe Premiere or After Effects, and you can continue to work on these there. And then just hit here the download button in order to just save time, as what I mentioned before. That's why I created the video before already, and I've added a few more shapes. That was it, basically, in a nutshell. Of Mapcreator, there's a few additional functionalities available. We can maybe quickly dive into those too. So this is one of the other videos that I actually stole from Jason's YouTube. He was talking about creating walking distances in GeoLayers. And just wanted to show you on how we can create these kind of circles, but don't worry about going through the entire rest of it. So for our circle feature, we just need to use the lines tool that's to be found in here, and in our dropdown, we have the possibility to draw a couple of lines, but what we want to do is to draw a circle. I can even tell that the circle needs to have a very specific center. You can either place latitude and longitude as coordinates, or just any POI or a city name or a country name. So let me just zoom out a little. I want to reset my tilt. Let's focus here in this area, not to make our map a little bit too dense. And I would like to show the area of around Eindhoven, for example, in the Netherlands, where our headquarters is, in a radius of 500 kilometers, which of course you can change to any other given unit you're comfortable with. And then I can just place my search query here, and you will see how the circle is immediately being drawn. And you can just continue to add additional circles on top of the map, change the transparency, change the color. So the styling features always remain available throughout the entire map making process. And lastly, only because Paul mentioned it as well in his presentation before, he was talking about the South China Sea developments. Just wanted to show you that we also have the possibility of importing GeoJSON files or KML files. So in fact, it's just a very simple drag and drop action that we need to do, and you will see the information immediately being mapped. And that was actually it already. I think I've maxed out my time. So thanks a lot for being here, for letting me share my insights. I hope you found one or the other things that we just created together interesting. Maybe you want to try out some Mapcreator maps yourself. I think there have been a few links to sign up if you don't have a Mapcreator account yet. So I hope we see you around, and I'm still around anyways for a few questions. So thanks a lot, everyone.